Hello, this is your soft pretzel demo, homemade soft pretzels. I will show you this demo as you go along. You can fill out your recipe. You may notice on your recipe we have two sections here for our ingredient list, that we have a pretzel dough section and then we have our soda bath. So we'll get into that when our dough is rising. That's going to help get our pretzels that nice chewy exterior that the soft pretzels are known for. That soda bath kind of helps get that extra brown and then that texture that we want on the outside. But before I forget, I am going to preheat my oven to 475 degrees. This doesn't have a whole lot of rise time like our cinnamon rolls did, so I can go ahead and preheat my oven now, and I'm going to do that just so that I don't forget later, and my oven's going to be nice and hot when I want it. So 475 degrees. And then taking a look at my step one. So my step one is I'm going to combine the water and sugar in the bowl of a stand mixer and sprinkle the yeast on top. We will allow to sit for 5 minutes or until the mixture begins to foam. All right, water. 1 cup of water, warm water, between 105 and 110 degrees. I was able to get this from my tap because my tap water is incredibly hot. You may need to, if you have really hot tap water, like mine's so hot I can't stand it, so it gets too hot. So I have to really check it to make sure I'm not going to kill it. But you could always put it in the microwave for a little bit longer to get it nice and warm. So 1 cup of water, I'm going to pour this into the bowl of my stand mixer, because I'm just going to do all of my mixing in my stand mixer with my dough hook today. And so I don't need to have another bowl. If you don't have a stand mixer, you could absolutely just do this with a bowl and a wooden spoon, or a bowl and a spatula, get your dough made. You do not need to have the stand mixer. It is not a necessity for this recipe. And my sugar. My sugar is only 1 teaspoon. 1 little teaspoon of sugar. Not a lot here, just enough to feed that yeast. And my yeast is 2 1/4 teaspoons. 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, sprinkled on top again, like we did with the cinnamon rolls, just so I don't have that clump, that ball of yeast that's trying to wake up and eat the sugar. Sprinkled over the top. Nice layer there. I've expanded that surface area for that yeast to eat that sugar, it be exposed to that warm water and the sugar. So I've got my 1 cup of warm water, my 1 teaspoon of sugar, my 2 1/4 teaspoons of the yeast, and I'm going to allow this to sit for 5 minutes until it becomes foamy. Once it becomes foamy, that's when we know that the yeast is waking up. It's eating the sugar and it's starting to burp up some of that CO2. It's beginning to have those beginning signs. And then we'll be able to follow through with step number 2. So 5 minutes is what we're going to let this set for. My 5 minutes has passed. So let's take a look. See what we got here. So some of that yeast has sunk down just a little bit. Maybe a little better. So some of the yeast you can see is sunk down towards the bottom. I can see the edges are starting to get a little foamy, and then I can start to see some of that yeast kind of sinking down to the bottom of the bowl, which is okay because that's where all the sugar is. This ring here is starting to look a little foamy. So we don't need to see a whole ton of foam right now. This is just the beginning stages. And I can see that's some foam right there, that lighter part of the ring. But as long as we have these signs, we've got a little bit of foam. We've got something going on here that's definitely giving me some hope that yes, my yeast is waking up. Everything is doing as it should right now. So moving on to step 2, I'm going to add the flour, melted butter, and salt using the dough hook attachment. Mix on low speed and knead until the dough is smooth and well combined. All right, so flour. I'm going to add 3 cups of flour. 3 cups of all-purpose flour. One tablespoon of melted butter, 1 tablespoon melted butter, and then 1 teaspoon of salt. 1 teaspoon salt. So I'll want to keep an eye on this to make sure that the flour is incorporating where I want it and need it to be. If it's starting to, the flour might be crawling up on the sides, I'll use my spatula to push that down where it needs to. If my dough ball looks sticky, maybe clinging to that dough hook, I can certainly encourage it off of there and have nice even distribution of all my flour. So I'm starting to see a bit of a dough ball forming, but I still have a lot of wet or dry flour on the side. So let me kind of move things around. So with step 2, it says I want to knead until the dough is smooth and well combined. When I go to step 3, it talks about turn the dough out on a lightly floured work surface and continue to knead for 5 to 8 minutes. You could certainly let the machine do the kneading for you, or you could definitely do it by hand if you don't have the mixer. Or as I've mentioned, if yeast spreads is new to you, if you wanted to use hand kneading to begin with, to get a good feel for the dough and how it should feel. So my dough ball is come together here. So a couple things. If you were to use the machine to knead your dough, do it on that kind of medium-high speed, definitely not a low speed, something a little medium to high. And then making sure, because I kicked it up to a little bit of a higher speed because my dough was kind of coming together, but it had that kind of shaggy look to it, as we've talked about with our biscuit. It just didn't look quite had it come together yet. So I turned it on high just a little bit just to make sure it came together. But this is definitely come together here. And then if you look at the inside of my bowl, it's not all sticky and tacky and a big old mess in there. So that's a good sign that I have a really nice dough ball here. So we can go ahead and get rid of our mixer. As I mentioned, if you wanted to use your mixer for kneading, you could certainly do that. I'm going to knead by hand, so I'll just do a little bit of flour on my work surface, not a ton, because just as I touch this dough, it's not sticking to my hands, it's not sticking to the bowl. These are all really good signs that I don't need a ton of flour. I just want a little bit of flour. Just a little extra insurance to know that it's not going to stick to my countertop, it's not going to stick to my hands. And then that kneading is just that process. I'm pushing out, folding it back on itself, giving it a quarter turn, pushing out, folding it on itself, a quarter turn. Just that push, fold in, turn, push, fold in, turn, over and over and over again. And then as we're doing this, as I've mentioned, we want to really be paying attention to what the condition of the dough is. Is it tearing? Is it resistant to us? Is it soft and velvety? What's happening to it? It's getting to this point of being a little resistant and tearing. So when it gets those tears, I don't want to see that too much. So I'm going to let this rest so that I can finish kneading it. I'll get caught up on some dishes. And when I let this rest 5 minutes or so, I just put that towel on it just to make sure it doesn't get like a dry skin on the outside. I don't want that. I still want it to hold its moisture and its heat. It is a little warm, so I want it to make sure it retains any warmth it has. So I'm going to let this just hang out for a few minutes, kind of relax just a tad. I'll get caught up on some dishes and I'll come back and kneading it. This dough has sat just a few minutes, not very long at all, but it does have such a different texture. It feels a lot softer and velvetier, and it doesn't have that tear quite yet. So I'll give it a little bit more time with kneading. So with our step 3, our blank is knead, so that we are going to knead on our lightly floured work surface. You can see that my flour is starting to go away here. I'm not super concerned about adding more flour. You can clearly see it's not sticking to the counter, it's not sticking to my hands. I don't need to add any more. So we'll turn on to our floured work surface. We're going to knead for 5 to 8 minutes. If you were putting this in the mixer, that would work as well. This recipe is written with like kitchen groups working in the classroom. So if you had a team of people or maybe of someone else at home, because it leads into step 4 that while you're kneading the dough, so whether you're kneading it in a mixer, you have a few spare moments, or if you're working in a kitchen, maybe you have someone working with you, you can get the soda bath ready. But if you're by yourself and you're doing it by hand, we can get our soda bath ready while our dough is rising, which is what I will do. So I'll skip worrying about my soda bread or my soda water right now, but then I'll look at step 5. Once I am done kneading, step 5 is put the dough in a lightly oiled bowl and we'll let rise in a warm place for 15 minutes. 15 minutes, or until dough has doubled in size. So with my lightly oiled bowl, we did this with cinnamon rolls. I have my vegetable shortening. And I can just grab a little bit with my paper towel, oil the bowl, just the bottom and the sides, just to ensure that as it sits in here for 15 minutes and I want to take it out, it's not going to stick to the bowl. So I still have a little bit of kneading to do. Just continue doing this on the countertop here. And then I'll come back when I let this rise, and then I'm going to be getting my soda bath ready. So I'll just finish kneading this. My dough is ready for its 15-minute rise time in its warm environment. I'm going to be putting this into my proof box that I have here in the classroom. So while this rises for 15 minutes, we can get our soda bath ready. So my soda bath, like I said, is that It's going to help get that crispy but slightly chewy, that really nice caramelized golden brown texture and color to the outside of our soft pretzels that soft pretzels are known for. So with my soda bath, it literally is water and baking soda. My water is going to be 2 cups. I need 2 cups of water. And I'm going to need 4 tablespoons of baking soda. 4 tablespoons of baking soda. So step 4 says, while kneading the dough, get the soda bath ready in a large shallow pot, or maybe like a fry pan. So I've got something here with some high sides that is going to let me hold a lot of liquid. And it also has a pretty large surface area, so maybe I can do 2 pretzels at a time as they take a little swim in my soda bath. So in a large shallow pot, combine the 2 cups of water and the 4 tablespoons of baking soda. Bring just to a boil. Then once boiling, pull off the burner and cool slightly. So when my pretzels are shaped and ready to go, I do want to put the pretzels in this soda bath, give them a dunk, a little swim in here, but I don't want it boiling hot. I don't want to burn myself. It may take a little bit of like using our hands or just a lot of utensils to get these flipped around, but I'm not trying to boil them in there. I want it to be warm. I'm going to bring it to a boil because I want to help the baking soda dissolve, but I don't want my pretzels to be swimming in this boiling hot water. I want it to be a little warm, but not quite boiling, to help protect me, and then I don't want to boil my pretzels. So let me get these ones set up, my soda bath set up. So ready to get my soda bath ready. 2 cups of the water. My 4 tablespoons of my baking soda. And I'll get this turned on. And then I just want to make sure that I see that that baking soda will start to dissolve, and heat is going to help that. Stirring it around definitely helps get it to dissolve, to get nicely distributed throughout the water. And then once I notice that it has dissolved, or if it's come to a boil and that's helped it dissolve, just moving this around is really encouraging that dissolving. I will turn the heat off and let it just sit at room temperature, let it start to cool off, because I still have 11 minutes left on my rise time. And then I still need to shape my pretzels. So by the time I'm done with rise time and I'm shaping my pretzels, this will hopefully be cool enough. And it doesn't need to be cold. We still do want it a little warm, but it'll be cool enough that I can get a few other utensils in there to get my pretzels in there. So I'm going to have, I've got spatula or a spoon, a slotted spoon, and tongs. So maybe this is going to help me get under there and kind of flip my pretzels around, because I will want to flip them. Or you could always scoop, just splash water over the top. That would work too. So I'm starting to see little bubbles. And then you can see here that we don't have too much of that cloudy baking soda anymore. So I think I'm good to turn this water off. You can see that it's looking really clear. If it settles as it kind of cools or as my rise time's going, I can keep stirring it. Stirring it seems to be a really good trick. But I'm just going to turn that off, and then I'll come back to shape my dough after my 15-minute rise time is over. My 15-minute rise time is over. It's looking like it has risen. It's very warm. My oil in my pan is keeping it from sticking so it can come right out. It's very soft. So step 6, when dough is ready, pat out flat on your work surface and cut dough into 8 pieces like a pizza. So I have my flour close by, just in case. I'm gonna go with not flouring right now. We'll see how it goes. It's not like it's feeling super sticky. I always like to keep flour close when I'm working with yeast dough, just in case at some point I feel like I might need it. Because we're doing pretzels, we're going to want to eventually roll these out into nice long ropes. If I have things too floured, it's going to make that process really difficult. So I don't want to over flour because then it won't roll really. So I just want to be really careful. Like I said, it doesn't feel super sticky, but it's always good to have some flour insurance here. So pat it out flat. So I just had it in that ball. I just want to get it into a disc, a circle, so that I can cut it into my 8 pieces like a pizza. And then I'm going to roll the pieces into long ropes and shape into pretzels. And then I'll place on a parchment lined sheet pan or 2 once they're shaped. All right, so cut like a pizza. I have my bench scraper, a butter knife would work really well, just even a pizza cutter, that would work just fine here. So it's in that circle disc shape just to make this process of cutting into equal parts a little easier for us. So now we have 4. Each of these wedges will be in half. One more time to give me 8. Get them pulled apart as soon as you cut them, because they do, once they're cut, they are going to want to like stick back together. So I like to pull them apart so that they can not stick to their neighbor. And then now, like I said, my workstation isn't floured, so this rolling part is becoming really easy. Otherwise, if you flour, it's like your ropes are just sliding. They're not really rolling, they're just sliding across the countertop. And it can be quite a frustrating time to try to roll if things are just sliding. So I've already got a couple sheet pans already fitted with my parchment paper. I folded them down so that they fit in there and I don't have any wonky edges. So I still want something a little thicker here, not too thin. But that's also your preference. If you want a really fat pretzel, go for it. Don't roll it out so thin. And then if you wanted it kind of thinner, you can roll it out thinner. You might want to watch your bake time on those. And then with your pretzel shapes, you can make whatever shape you want. I've seen all kinds of different shapes throughout the years, but so for your pretzel shape, if you're a professional pretzel shaper, you've shaped a couple pretzels, you can kind of spin it in the air. On your recipe, you do have a step-by-step on how to get that pretzel shape, and I will show you that. So I've got my long rope, going to shape it into a U, and then I'll cross them over one more time so I have this nice little cross twist here, and then now I just take those ends and put it down to the bottom of that U where I started. A fatter edge on one side, gonna try to get it as even as I can. So I have a U, cross over my tails, cross them over one more time, and then now I'm gonna flip them towards me. And then I can kind of readjust to make sure I've got a nice pretzel shape that I am looking for here. If you wanted an extra twist, you can certainly do an extra twist. Like I said, your shapes are up to you. You can be really creative with the way that you shape them. Or if you wanted pretzel sticks, that's a thing now. Pretzel sticks is a thing. Pretzel bites are a thing. I've seen people roll them into ropes and then put their initials, try to create their initials with their pretzel ropes. That works too. So with your spinning in the air move, I just take the both of the ends here, and then I just cross them so they have a little bit of momentum to cross, and then there's always a little readjusting to do after you do that one. You can spin them in the air if you want. I'm going to finish shaping my last two, and then I'll show you our soda bath process. I've got my soda bath ready to go. It's warm. I can obviously get my hands in there, but it's not too hot. And then now I have my 2 sheet pans of pretzels that are shaped. 2 sheet pans, you just don't want to overcrowd your pan. I don't want to put all of these on there because number one, my pretzels are gonna not be able to have room. I'll reshape these after they hit the soda bath, but they're gonna be super crowded. You don't get an even bake that way. So moving on to step 7, when all of the dough is shaped, place the pretzels in a soda bath for 2 minutes. I do not want to overcrowd, so don't overcrowd the pan. So I'll just do a couple at a time. Do only 1 or 2 at a time, whatever your pan can handle. If I can get 3 in here, I'll try to get 3 in here, but I don't want to get them all close together because I'm going to be getting the outsides of these wet. And then if they're going to touch their neighbor, they're likely to stick. So then I'll place the pretzels back on my parchment lined pan when out of the soda bath. Sprinkle with kosher salt if desired while pretzels are still wet. Get my salt. Okay, so get some in here, see what I got for room. I think I can get a 3rd one in there. So just a couple minutes, I can certainly flip these. I'll probably flip these. So I have a couple utensils. I've also shown that it's warm enough or cool enough that I can get my hands in here. So if I wanted to flip with my hands, I could certainly do that. Our hands are our best tools, so sometimes just working with your hands is a little easier. So just a few minutes, you can get them flipped over. And I have my sheet pan really close to where I need to go. My soda bath is here, my sheet pan where they're going to land is right here. When I get ready to move my things, I might want to make room. The couple things for this is kind of part of my mise en place. My mise en place is I have everything close and ready to go. And I'm not dragging these pretzels all over the counter. I'm not having to travel far. They're a little unstable, right? They don't hold up their shape super well right now, so I don't really want to take them all across the kitchen. The other thing is they just make a big mess. You'll notice that if you have any drips of your soda water onto your stove or even your counter, it leaves a residue as it dries, and it's just that soda. The water evaporates and it's baking soda that's left on your counter really is all that is. So it just ensures a little extra cleanup. There's always a good stove wipe down at the end of this lab because the baking soda, anytime it drips on there, like I said, it just leaves that residue. So I always give my stove a nice wipe down, my counters if I've dripped anywhere, because I don't want that baking soda drip anywhere hanging out. And then you can certainly reshape them if you're not liking them. And then while these ones are still wet and the other ones are in the bath, I'll sprinkle just a little bit with some kosher salt if you want it. If you have rock salt, you could do that as well, like that chunky pretzel salt. The other thing that you could do is that cinnamon and sugar, but I would recommend doing that after they bake. So when these come out of the oven, I still have some melted butter left on my recipe list, my ingredient list. These are going to get brushed with some melted butter. So what I would suggest is if you wanted cinnamon and sugar, that you would do that after they bake, after they get brushed with butter. You can certainly have options for toppings. Maybe I'll get this skinnier one where I don't have super copious amounts of room. Get the salt on this one. So with your pan, making sure that your pan selection, like I said, I have something with some higher sides. This isn't super full by any means, but I have enough room to kind of shake things around. I'm not spilling over the edges. I'm not worried about it making a big old mess. So a fry pan with some high sides is ideal. Okay, I have pretzels. They're all soda bathed up and they're all salted. So step 8, when all the pretzels are soaked and salted, bake for 8 to 9 minutes until golden brown. Then I'm going to immediately brush the pretzels with 3 tablespoons once they're out of the oven. So my last bit of melted butter that's on your ingredient list is going to be 3 tablespoons of melted butter. So I'll get these baking. I'll still remember that I want to rotate halfway through. So I'll do 4 minutes, rotate halfway through, and then check for doneness. And if I need to add more time, I can. These are skinny enough. I think I can get them side by side in my oven. While it's baking, I'm going to go ahead and get my 3 tablespoons of melted butter ready to go so that when they come out, I can brush them while they're still hot with my melted butter. I have my warm, nice golden brown pretzels and my melted butter. So now when they're nice and hot is the time to brush them with their melted butter, those 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Nice pastry brush will do the job. And then this would be the point. So if you were to have skipped the salt and you wanted to opt for cinnamon and sugar, this would be that time. So if you were to have no salt, you would be brushing them with the butter, and then you would be sprinkling some mixed cinnamon and sugar on top of your pretzels. You could probably use that same cinnamon and sugar mixture from cinnamon rolls if you wanted to do that, and just sprinkle that on top so that the butter is going to help all that cinnamon and sugar stick. Getting short on some butter, but I got a pool of butter here, so I'll steal it. And then they become really glossy, shiny, pretty. And then once you pull them up, a baking soda bath tends to make them stick a little. I'll show you the bottom. Again, cold and golden brown, and it has a little bit of crunch on there, that crunch that you want from a pretzel, and it gets a little bit chewy. Now it's buttery, salty, super delicious. So that is homemade soft pretzels.